welcome back to my channel and welcome to another installment of my What I Wish I Had Known series, where I cover a variety of topics in motherhood and parenting and marriage and other random lifestyle stuff. And I tell you guys all the things that surprised me about things like being pregnant, having a baby, buying a house for the first time. If you want to see the full playlist, it will be right up here for you. But today's topic is going to be what I wish I had known about marriage after having kids. I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you guys that marriage does change a lot after you have children. Your priorities shift, your world is kind of upended, and even the way that you spend your time is drastically different than it was before. I am not here to scare you. I will talk about the good parts and the bad parts just from my own experience, but I know that this is a topic that a lot of you guys have asked me about, so I wanted to sit down and chat with you guys and share what we have been through and what we've learned. The first thing that really surprised me after having a baby is that it is not 50-50 in the beginning. Even in the most ideal, perfect partnership where both partners are sharing the load equally, the early days of having a baby, especially if you are the person giving birth, are not 50-50. This may be different if you grew your family through surrogacy or adoption, but in my personal case, I had 2 pregnancies, 2 births, and I was very shocked that so much of the burden fell on my shoulders in the early days of parenting. Especially if you are breastfeeding, and that is something that you are doing every 2 to 3 hours with your baby. In a lot of cases, they'll advise for you not even to pump for the first couple of weeks because your milk supply is getting established. So that really kind of falls on you. Even if you're not breastfeeding, your baby has been inside of your body for 9 months and they are used to your voice and your smell and the sound of your heartbeat, and they are going to want to be with mom a lot of the time. Now, this isn't to say that Matt didn't take on the burden in other ways, like he dealt with the lion's share of the housework and the meal prep, but at times it can be really overwhelming after you've given birth and you just feel like, oh my gosh, keeping this tiny human alive is all on my plate. There's so much that you can't do, and it can get frustrating and you can get a little bit resentful towards your partner. And this is when communication is so key. It was huge for me to ask for what I needed instead of just expecting Matt to be a mind reader, which is not a revolutionary concept. But the more impactful thing for me was to take a step back and tell myself that my needs were legitimate and that they deserved to be met. I think a lot of times as women, we can have a lot of guilt over asking for help and asking for our needs to be met, but you are giving so much of yourself in the season of life and you need to be taken care of too, and it is not selfish to ask for that. Second thing I wish I had known is that it is really easy to lose your identity as a spouse or as a couple to your identity in parenthood. And what I mean by this is, before we had kids, I was like obsessed with being a wife, and before that a fiance, and before that a girlfriend. Like, it was a huge part of who I was. It brought me so much joy. I was constantly like taking pictures with Matt and talking about him with my friends, and I love him just as much now, probably more than I did then. But my first identity now is kind of as a mother, and I realized the other day that I literally do not have a single recent picture of just Matt and I without our children. Obviously, pictures aren't the biggest deal in the world, but I think that that illustrates kind of the larger, implication that my identity as a mom has really surpassed my identity as a wife. I hear a lot of people talk about this in kind of like losing yourself in motherhood, which can definitely be a thing as well, and is a great thing that people are talking about. But I think that it is just as easy to kind of lose your identity as a couple and put that second. So I've really had to work on consciously prioritizing my marriage as the foundation for our family. That is the house that our kids grow up in emotionally, and I want to make sure that I'm putting the proper time and love and care in this. And when the kids leave the house, I want to make sure that Matt and I are still best friends. We still have stuff in common. We have hobbies together. We have things to talk about. And yes, I also want to make sure that we have pictures together in this time. I just didn't realize that that would take so much effort. Another thing that I learned really quickly after having a baby, and then again after having 2 babies, is that it is really tough to learn to not take your frustrations with the kids out on your partner. Especially when your kids are really little and the baby is crying or the toddler is not listening and testing boundaries. That can be very triggering and obviously have a lot of feelings of frustration associated with it. But I think instinctually that those frustrations are not appropriate to vent at your child. Of course, we all have moments when we snap, but a lot of times Matt and I find that we will tend to direct those frustrations at each other, even though it's not about anything that's happening in our relationship, because it's easier to snap at another adult and you feel a little less guilty doing so than it is to snap at your kid. Another thing I wasn't expecting is that the household chores like double when you have a baby. Like I knew there was obviously going to be more work in our lives just from having to take care of the kiddo, but things like laundry and dishes feel like they multiply exponentially, and chores become a huge sticking point and a huge source of resentment if you're not sharing them equally. Again, make sure you have clear expectations about this, and maybe you trade off like, hey, I hate doing the dishes and you hate doing laundry. Let me do the laundry and you do the dishes. Or if you both hate both of those things, you switch off every week. Also, you have to work so hard to get intentional one-on-one time that doesn't involve any screens. I always heard people say, oh, you don't get as much time with your spouse after you have a baby, you have to prioritize date night, etc. And that's all true, but I also feel like there's more time than I thought there would be in terms of like the kids go to bed at 7 or 7:30 and we have the rest of the night together, but we are so gassed and our emotional energy is like on the floor after a hard day with the kids. And so it's not always easy to make that time meaningful. So while I have a little bit more time with Matt than I thought that I would, it's hard to make it real quality time, if that makes sense. Something else that has been kind of challenging is learning that you and your partner are not always going to agree on disciplinary things. And I'm not talking about like the big things, because ideally you've talked about all the really big important parenting decisions. I'm talking like the day-to-day, the toddler's having a tantrum, like how do we deal with this right now? And what Matt and I have found really helpful is to have a code word when we feel like one person is maybe being a little bit too harsh in terms of like, I don't know, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. Sometimes when Matt is like really angry and he's trying really hard to gentle parent, he'll be like, Rowan, if you don't stop throwing your truck, I'm going to take it away and you're never going to see it again. And I have to be like, babe, dial it back. It's really good that you're not yelling, but maybe like never ever is a big word. It's been hugely helpful that we are on the same page with most of the big things, but that day-to-day stuff does still come up. And you want to present a united front to your kid. Like we are definitely teaching Rowan like, hey, if daddy says no, like don't come ask mommy. Mommy's answer is daddy's answer. But then we say that code word and we'll like talk about it in private. Continually learning and growing. Now I want to talk about some of the things that have pleasantly surprised me about marriage after kids. And the first one is about intimacy. I know you guys will all want to hear about this. I get tons of questions about this all the time. And I was very pleasantly surprised that in our case, intimacy didn't really change too much after kids. At least the experience of it didn't. I mean, for sure we have less time, especially in the mornings. If you like to be intimate in the mornings, like that's a lot more difficult after kids. But Matt isn't bothered by the changes in my body. Everything feels the same for both of us for the most part. I thought maybe it would be weird to be intimate like that after giving birth. I thought maybe he would be weirded out because he like obviously watched me give birth, but it's been so not weird and I feel like we're closer than ever. Another thing that I didn't anticipate was the amount of happy crying. You guys, I shed tears of joy like multiple times a week, if not on a daily basis, just looking at my husband and my kids. Like watching him play with Rowan or Juniper, just like, man, I well up. I feel like I'm just living my dream life and I'm so much more in love with my spouse seeing him as a dad. I know that's like such a cliche thing to say, but it's true. We have also learned the importance of small gestures and words of affirmation. I feel like big declarations of love and flowers and fancy trips were very much like a pre-kid thing for us, but what I have found just as impactful is just expressing our gratitude and appreciation for each other daily. It has strengthened our relationship so much to just be like, hey, I noticed that Rowan was really pushing back at dinner and you were so patient with him and I really admire that about you. It sparks a lot of really good conversations too about like our own childhoods and upbringing, and it's just really brought us so much closer. I would also go back and tell pre-kid me about the efficacy of weekend getaways. We didn't take really any trips for Rowan's whole babyhood, but we've gotten better about that in the last year. I think a large part of it is due to the world feeling a little bit safer because we had him mid-pandemic. It always feels like it takes so much effort and so much money to plan time off and book flights and a hotel and schedule babysitting, and I'm pumping every 3 hours, but it does wonders for our relationship when we take even 2 days to get out of our city and just spend one-on-one time with each other. I thought that I would miss travel so much more, but those 2 or 3 days often feel like enough, and by the end of it, we are like excited to go home and see our kids, and we feel like our marriage is just like refreshed and we're feeling good. So weekend getaways are key for us. The last thing that I will wrap up this video with is that your your life and your marriage, it's gonna look very different in the season of young children than it will any other time in your life. And that can be scary at first because it's different. You know, you're not looking at a clean house and vacations and free time to hang out with friends. But on the other side of that, there are also so many incredible things about the stage of life. And the hard parts aren't forever. It really is a short season. I really have to remind myself of that sometimes. It's like that Instagram Reels audio. Like, it is not the time for a clean house. It's the time for young children and playing in the park and going for family walks, and you know, all of that is beautiful as well. That is all I have for you guys today. I hope this video was helpful. Again, it's just my personal experience. There have definitely been hard parts of marriage in parenthood, but Matt and I are so glad that we had kids. We would never have it any other way, and our relationship is so much stronger because of it. Just be intentional, communicate, and remember that at the end of the day, you're a team and you love each other and you chose to do this together. If you want to see more of these What I Wish I Had Known style videos, make sure that you click that subscribe button down there. We also do a lot of motherhood, lifestyle content, vlogs, all that good stuff on this channel. I would love to have you here. I hope you're having a great day. I love you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you all in my next video. Bye! Golden things. Golden. Wildflower only golden. Golden.